Well, PSVR 2 is finally here. Or, I mean, it's not here. I mean, it's here. Like, it exists. Somewhere. Ever since the start of the year, we've been hearing more details trickle out about this fancy headset. And now we've gotten a better look at some of the games that this thing will play. And I think it's a good time to talk about it. Obviously, showing a trailer of a VR game is not going to be the same as actually using the headsets. And that's why I'm glad we have the technical details and specs to look through. And because I'll never get a chance to do it again, I just wanted to talk about what I think of PSVR 2 and, well, PSVR in general. The original PlayStation VR was a bit of an oddity when it released in 2016. It had been announced as Project Morpheus, and there was quite a lot of hype for this headset. At the time, most units were far more expensive and required a PC, so it was no surprise that when Sony was getting in, people took notice. Now, it was never going to be an exceptional device. It had to work on a PS4, which was far weaker than the PC counterparts running VR at the time. It had to be cheaper as well. There's no way you could ask people to pay $600 for an accessory to a console that cost almost half that price. Yoshida said before launch that this was the first generation in a new product line for PlayStation, one that would hopefully last decades. Now, I was a bit weary about PSVR 2, mostly because of my experience with the original. I bought one at launch, which cost a pretty penny at the time. On top of that, you'd be required to buy the necessary PlayStation Eye to track the headset and the PS Move controllers that were grandfathered in from the PS3 days. Yeah, the 6 degrees of freedom and the controllers blew my mind, but after the initial excitement wore off, it wasn't particularly comfortable. It was hot, pressed against your face as the lenses fogged up over time. The controllers were not designed for VR, and that was pretty clear. The resolution was low at just 960 by 1080 per eye. On a VR headset, that's very underwhelming. It took up a lot of space next to my TV with all those wires, the processing box, the PlayStation Eye, the Move controllers, the USB cables to charge the Move controllers, and the headset itself. Eventually, I got sick of all the clutter, and not many games were releasing after the immediate launch, so I put it in a closet somewhere and it disappeared. In hindsight, it was a waste of money on my end, but it wasn't a terrible experience, just a humbling one. I understood what Yoshida meant by a first-generation product. This was a look into the future, sure, but a future that wasn't quite here yet. At first, people dismissed it as a failure. The sales numbers weren't there, but over time, it got something of a cult following. By 2020, about 5 million units were sold. It's easily one of the most successful VR headsets produced, and it makes sense considering it ran on a game console that a lot of people owned. There's nothing wrong with that. If you like it, great. But in recent years, it's been pretty clear that this is kind of a dinosaur. So when PSVR 2 was initially announced, I had mixed feelings. The PSVR 1 was the budget VR units. You got this if you couldn't get the rest. Now I can get the rest, so do I care? Well, yeah, because PSVR 2 seems quite exceptional, even in the modern lineup of headsets. They definitely made the right move in getting rid of that PlayStation Eye and the Move controllers. Sure, it's not wireless, but hey, it's one wire instead of all of this. The screen resolution got a much needed boost to 2000 by 2040 per eye, and a field of view of 110 degrees. This might not mean anything to you, but it's good. Not as good as some articles have claimed. It definitely does not have twice the pixels per inch of a Quest 2, and it won't have the best pixels per degree on the markets, but it's a huge leap above the original headset. Now, as I mentioned before, the original PSVR games didn't really look that good, irregardless of the screen quality. The trailers would often kind of misrepresent the experience. This made sense. After all, the PS4 rarely played games at 60 FPS at 1080p. Asking it to do 90 or 120 frames a second at a higher resolution with 2 images rendered at once, it's no surprise that the games looked like this. We've seen a few trailers of PSVR 2 games already, and they look much, much better than the original headsets. In fact, they might be some of the best looking VR games out there, regardless of platform. There's a question whether they'll actually look this good on the new headset, but I think it might be possible. Yeah, the PS5 isn't as capable as a high-end PC, but in my experience, most PC VR games don't take advantage of high-end GPUs. VR is a niche market compared to the rest of gaming, and PC VR is even more niche. within the niche market. Developers don't want to target the highest specs because they want the widest possible audience, which means most games tend to run on mobile chipsets or aging GPUs. Even if the PS5 isn't the top of consumer computing, it's a much higher bar than we currently have, which seems to be older rigs and the Quest 2. What interests me is the fact the headset has eye tracking and foveated rendering, which takes the areas your eyes aren't looking at and decreases the detail. This is important because VR has to render a lot of things at once, and you won't notice if the image gets a bit blurry in the areas your eyes aren't focused on. At a GDC panel, Unity claimed this would have a 3.6 times performance boost, and if that's the case, these visuals shown off in recent trailers aren't unrealistic. I appreciate the focus on haptic feedback, which I maintain is the best feature of the PS5. 3D audio is nice, and head vibration? Yeah, that's not an industry standard, but I'd be interested in trying it. The biggest miss I can find is the lack of finger tracking and hand tracking. Now, it can sense where your hands are on the controller without pressing a button, but it doesn't have like whole hand tracking. Recent reports suggest that this headset won't release until early 2023, and it's possible that this is because the games have to be made first. Sony is working at a disadvantage here. Unlike everything else on the market, when they make a new headset, they have to build the software library from the ground up. Older PSVR titles are backwards compatible, but only a few will likely be updated to support PSVR 2's new controllers and features. Otherwise, you'll need to hook up a PlayStation camera via adapter and use your old Move controllers. And yeah, I don't imagine a lot of people are going to do that. I think the closed ecosystem of PlayStation has many benefits, especially in VR. These games can potentially look better because all the developers know that each user is running the same hardware configuration, that being the PS5. But it also comes at the cost of mods, third-party supports, and all the really fun stuff that tends to come in PC-based VR. But that's a given quantity when working with consoles. You lose a few things, but you get some stuff in return. I don't think it's that outlandish to expect PSVR 2 to greatly outsell the original headset. I mean, overall, VR has seen a massive rise in popularity. It's possible they'll delay the unit to get more games ready, or simply to wait until the PS5s are actually available. If I had to take a guess on price, I'm gonna say $399. Maybe $449. I don't know. It won't be that cheap, that's what I'm saying. Whether it can take the top crown from the Quest 2, or if it can fend off against Apple's potential offerings, remains to be seen. There'll be a lot more competition than the first time around, but I'm still excited. You know, I felt burned on the last one, but I think this is a far more ambitious headset. And yeah, that's the PSVR 2. What do you think about it? Do you care? No? Oh. Sorry for wasting your time then.